I'm Gary Miller from Columbia University, and I'm here with Rémi Quirion, and we're going to talk about policy in Exposomics. So Rémi, why don't we start about hearing some about your background?
I'm a neuroscientist, was for about 30 years at McGill University in Montreal, and then for the past 15 years, the chief scientist of Quebec. So the longest serving chief scientist in the world.
And so what does a chief scientist do in Quebec?
It's basically giving advice to the government, all type of advice. Of course, when it's related to neuroscience, a bit easier for me. When it's related to other type of topic like policy making in terms of aggressive dogs, for example, or mining industry, then of course I rely on a colleague in the community to provide advice. And the bottom rule, in a sense, that I provide advice, I don't decide anything. Basically, the elected official, in the end, they that make the decision. They follow the advice or not, depending on other considerations. So that's part of the deal.
Okay, so as you know, I'm very interested in exposomics,
Yep.
and we look at using the exposome to study all the complex exposures that people face throughout their lives. How do you see exposomics influencing policy at a national level, whether it be in Canada or other countries?
I think the project that you have and others in terms of exposomic is fabulous. So we need to go there. We need to go to provide strong advice to government on these issues. Global issues need to be in the long term. So one of the challenge, of course, is long term, because often elected officials, policymakers, they move around quite a lot. They are there for 2-3 years, then they move. So you have to make sure that when you discuss with them, you have kind of a long-term type of approach. And that's certainly challenging, but you have to tell them it will be for the benefits of society, not the benefits of me as a scientist. That's one of the first messages I will say, that we have to convince them of that. Policymaker at the moment still not very much aware about exposomic. Why should they try to understand the term exposomic? What does it really mean? So to have practical example, smoking is one of them, microplastic is another. So providing example and then being with them, kind of winning their trust. So you don't go there saying, I know everything, you should do this. You basically have exchange, they provide their concern, they talk to you about their concern, and then you build a relationship. That's very, very important. At least the way I did that in Quebec, it's really in the end, that's the only way to make sure it may work. Not sure that it will always work, but it may work. And we're trying to do the same at the global level with the International Network on Governmental Science Advice that I have the pleasure to preside.
I think when I talk to many people just in the community, while exposomics can sound like a complicated scientific concept, they intuitively understand that they're influenced by all this complexity around them. And I think getting policymakers to see the same thing is that you can't always look at one type of exposure at a time because we live in a complex system. And so if you regulate this certain molecule and you don't address the ones that are associated with it, you have an incomplete picture. But I do think it's something that we need to do a better job of packaging this exposome message for policymakers. We tend to talk in our scientific circles,
yes,
but getting out, is that something like, so you say you give out a lot of advice. What advice could you give to the scientific community in exposomics to help get that message in a form that the policymakers can use?
I think what you said in terms of global, it's not just one aspect. And I think now more and more in various countries, if you think about health, there's quite a bit of discussion on One Health type of concept. So that can help in a sense because it's a bit of the same type of strategy. Yes, health and your DNA and everything, but also the impact of climate change on that. Social aspect of health also very important. So I think health can help a little bit because in many countries, at least in the northern hemisphere, about 50% of the budget goes to health. So I think if you go using that as a strategy, It takes time, still it takes time. You need to get the trust of the policymaker. And for scientists, and we're trying to have a bit of a training program, like in Quebec, but other places as well. So like your most recent paper in Nature or in Science, you're very excited about that and you want to tell your story. To the policymaker, if you go for 15 minutes, they'd be bored. So basically you have to explain things very, very simple and go back and forth all the time. One of the strategies we're developing in Quebec is to have what we call scientists in residence in various ministries. So they are kind of bridge between, I would say, the pure academician scientific society and the policymaker and elected official. So they are kind of translator and bridge between the two. And I think it's important to have this type of bridge.
It's interesting, like thinking about the sort of One Health concept is that goes way beyond human health and thinks about our ecosystems. When you think about different funding agencies, like in the United States, I don't see our National Institutes of Health looking at One Health because it gets outside that human, what their charge is. But our National Science Foundation does have more of an interest in the sort of ecological part. It was interesting that there was a meeting in Lyon a couple of weeks ago that Macron oversaw about One Health. And I wasn't able to attend, but I know that the Exposome did come up as one of the sort of tools to measure that. But it gets back to like the kind of fit for purpose for different regions of the world and different countries based on their own structures. And so we've been talking a lot about how, if you think about a roadmap for advancing the field of exposomics, it's not going to be one roadmap for each part of the world. Like we need to have one that is tailored to those particular needs, but still is in a global context because we live together on Earth. So I think that it's a challenging part, but I think getting some of our language that's policy friendly, consistent would be very helpful, because I'd rather reinventing the wheel.
I think it's very important, and we should learn, and we have not learned as much I think we should have from the pandemic, that one model is not appropriate for everyone everywhere in the world. So we have to make sure that it's tailored according to the local or country need, and also to move maybe a bit more. And some countries have done that. Like for us recently in the province of Quebec, we merged the 3 funding organizations. So of course we still fund chemistry and we still fund social science, but we have a pot of money, a budget in a sense for a very multidisciplinary type of project, which would be like Exposomics would be great there.
So I have a background in neuroscience as well. So let's go back to your neuroscientist. What were you working on back as a investigator?
Mostly I was in a large psychiatric hospital. So mostly Alzheimer's disease, dementia, and then on the mental health side, schizophrenia and suicide.
It's very interesting in looking at neurological and neuropsychiatric disorders in the exposome context. Like a lot of people initially thought kind of like that chemical exposure aspect is the easy thing to think about. But when you think about the sort of cognitive things, our social media has become a major driver of how people's moods are affected. And like, this is like a challenge, is like we really need the cooperation with the companies that run these platforms. And I think that is something where you need to have a high-level political collaboration to make that happen.
And maybe using not just them, but like kids, teenagers, as a kind of project, a study for that, what's happened in their brain when they go on media, social media, 10-hour day or things like that. But as you said, we need to bring on board the large company involved in these fields. Not a given. It will take a bit of work.
Right, but something we definitely consider. So one of the challenges we're facing in Exposomics now is kind of building these global networks that can help advise in these areas. What can you tell me about INGSA as a potential model?
Yeah, INGSA is about 6,000 members at the moment, 130 different countries, and one of the first global organizations that was really established first in the Global South, in Africa. So we'll build chapter. So it's really bottom up. So chapter in Africa, chapter in Asia, in Latin America, now a newer one in Europe, and we're developing one in North America. And really it's bottom up. So really the need of the continent or the region. So they are specializing in issues related to their own needs. And I think, and now we are at the stage when they start to network between themselves. And that basically may be a model that could be of interest for the big Exposomic type of program. So I think that It takes time. You have to build, again, trust, relationship, because they have different way of doing things. You have to bring, I would say as well, to add a bit to the complexity, have to bring on board citizens. Because also they'd be at some point the key player, advising even more than chief scientists, for example, advising government. This, when citizens advise government, sometimes it's more powerful than me when I go to see my minister.
I think Exposomics has very much embraced citizen science.
Yep.
It's because we have a lot of low-cost sensors and devices that people can we deploy and work with them. So I think that's been a good part of it. But when you think about that organization piece, I agree that there needs to be this sort of molecular self-assembly at those areas because it can't be a top-down thing. But it does. Can be hard to force, right? It's more of a guidance.
I think it has to be. Again, it's a matter probably of trust. The way we did that with INGSA over the past 10 years, because now 10 years old, it's providing a bit of seed money to these chapter, and they use it the way they want, in a sense, and give it enough freedom, because all these guys on the chapter, they're all voluntary. They don't get the salary for it. So the research program or project, and if we come back, for example, just what we mentioned a few minutes ago about mental health, addiction or whatever to social media, impact of social media. This is everywhere in the world also. Of course, maybe there's a bit more in the northern hemisphere, but in as many countries, for example in Africa, they are jumping directly to there, to the cell phone and social media and all that. So I think it's one model that we could could inform what you're trying to do. So INGSA as a model could inform what you're trying to do, and we'll be pleased to eventually join force with you.
Okay. Yeah, I think that having more of these organizations work together and building off what they've done would be really fantastic. So in thinking about how Exposomics moves forward, what can we learn about past missteps that have occurred in different areas?
I think the genomic is one typical example, and of course the infrastructure was very expensive in those days to do that. But I think now with the new technology, with the Exposomic and many of sensors that you could have, I think there you need to talk with local government, even cities, talking with cities, citizens and cities, saying, we would like to work with you on that. We don't know everything, but we can learn from you, not just you going there and say, we want to work with you, but you should do that. That doesn't work. So taking time to dialogue. So the dialogue is very critical.
Okay. Thank you.